Welcome back to Chow Time Pods. Your host Red. I got a video today from Shusha Zed. Super Inception in this one. A reaction of a reaction of a reaction.
So the title of this video is Why Koreans Are Marrying Foreigners. But based on what I've learned about the social, dating, and relationship dynamics in Korea, this video should be titled Why Korean Men Are Sick and Tired of Feminism and the Rest of the World Should Take Heed.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
This is one of those videos that you're going to have to see through caffeinated eyes. By the way, if you enjoyed the last video I did to shed more light on what's happened in South Korea, titled The War on Korean Men Backfired So Badly That Feminism Destroyed Itself, go ahead and give this video a hype. Now, keep in mind that we're talking about a country here that requires all ably-bodied men to join the military. You don't have a choice. You have to legally do it. You can skip out on it, but then you'd have to face severe legal, financial, and lifelong social consequences. Chisha, what do you mean read between the lines? Well, take this section of the video here where they talk about the percentages of which gender are choosing to become passport bros. That's what we're going to call them. Passport bros. That's what they're doing. Check this out.
Currently, the ratio of international marriages is roughly 75% Korean men marrying foreign women and 25% Korean women marrying foreign men.
I wonder why. Let's check out this video from the top.
It's men have an easier time to travel around and find nice, softer women. Rough women have a hard ass time finding a rougher man than them.
Now, you've probably heard the headlines. South Korea is disappearing. South Korea's low birth rate, blah, blah, blah. Elon Musk famously tweeted that at this rate, the peninsula might eventually be empty. With a birth rate that plummeted to 0.72, experts have dubbed this population cliff a demographic collapse so steep it threatens the very survival of the nation. But amidst this gloom, a strange headline flickered in 2024. The number of marriages in South Korea suddenly jumped by 14.8%. After a decade of freefall, people wondered, is the crisis over? Are young Koreans finally falling in love again? Well, the reality is more of a math trick than a romantic revival. When you look closer, this wasn't a change of heart, but a change of timing. Most of that jump was actually just a backlog of couples who delayed their weddings during COVID-19, or savvy pairs finally registering their marriage after milking the benefits of their single status, like separate low-interest housing loans. So the economic pressure hadn't vanished, and people were just navigating around it. But hidden in that data was a much more significant permanent shift. Interestingly, in 2023, international marriages in Korea surged by 18.3%. And by 2024, the momentum continued as the number of international marriage reached more than 20,000 cases, a 5.3% increase from the previous year's 19,000. So what does this mean for the big picture?
Shout out to the passport bros. Listen, go where you're appreciated, right?
International marriages now account for 10% of all weddings in this country.
Damn, that's
in other words, almost 1 out of 10 newlywed couples in Korea is now finding their love across borders. This rate is holding steady and is only predicted to increase. For a Western viewer, that might not sound shocking, but you have to understand that Korea is historically one of the most ethnically homogenous countries on Earth, and we've traditionally taken immense pride in that single bloodline identity. So this leaves us with the big question. Why are Koreans, who are notoriously picky about status, wealth, and background, suddenly deciding that their best chance at happiness lies across the oceans?
Because women are miserable.
So we have to first look at this question. Why is it so hard for Koreans to marry other Koreans? It turns out that the marriage market here has transformed into a brutal survival audition. Now let's be clear, there are many
Sounds like American markets.
structural reasons for Korea's low birth rate. Personally, I think the biggest problem is the astronomical housing cost, the job insecurity, and the crushing expenses of private education for kids. But lately, a more visceral term has been trending on social media.
Let's hear it.
The auditioning of marriage. In most places, marriage is ideally about finding a partner. But in Korea's hyper-competitive climate, it feels like you're being graded on a scorecard. People aren't just looking for a soulmate. They're looking for a winner who can guarantee a middle-class life in a failing economy.
One of the things in the last video that I spoke about were the very eerie similarities between what's happening in South Korea and what we see starting off here?
I think it's the same thing but because South Korea and Japan are so Americanized, they have so much American influence in media. They're just a smaller microcosm of the US, right? They are just smaller Asian countries, but doing the exact same things that Americans are doing currently, in a sense, but they just take it to the next degree because they're their own nation. They don't have immigrants. They don't have all these other things that kind of really change their dynamic up a little bit. Once it gets kind of to this point, they're kind of going with it.
And a few people left comments on the last video, like this commenter who says, I feel like in general, Asia tends to be 5 to 10 years ahead of us.
True.
Always useful to see what they're doing and the results. Somebody else who says we can learn a lot from the male Korean movement.
And this brings us to a controversial word, hypergamy. Historically, men provided and women managed the home.
Here we
and
go.
today, Korean women are just as successful as men, but the economic expectations haven't caught up to that reality. Many still feel the systemic pressure for the man to provide a perfect financial foundation. And the problem is that in today's economy, there aren't enough perfect men to go around with. This creates a massive bottleneck where everyone...
See, it's not good men. It's perfect men. He put it perfectly.
One is stuck waiting for a partner that barely exists.
I have to say this. I'm sorry. So what does this prove? And I really want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below. If women are told, hey, you could be just like a man in terms of earning potential, and they're encouraged to live life like men outside of the household, their pursuits and career, so on and so forth, but they're unable to still suppress that hypergamy, because that's what you have to do. Yes, some women actually do this. They realize like, hey, I'm not going to find another millionaire. We see them struggling, millionaire females as well. There's a whole bunch of talk shows of like, why is women so successful, but they cannot find a man. They just don't get it. They are shrinking their dating market by becoming more successful because naturally we know that women are hypergamous. People have pushed back against this and said like, hey, what we're now asking for, and they'll blame it on a lack of emotional intelligence, because we don't need your money now, we need emotional intelligence.
No, but you still want it. You still want us to pay all the bills. So that is still a necessary component of everything else, not just emotional intelligence.
We need you to be more like women, and so on and so forth.
And the pressure is extreme. To give you some perspective, a decent apartment in Seoul, the kind people actually want to raise a family in, now averages around $1 million. When the barrier to entry is $1 million, the audition becomes almost impossible for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And people often want a partner with a big corporate job, 6-figure salary, or in a specialized profession like law or medicine. And on top of the bank account, you have the self-management test, 자기 관리. For men, the bar is set at the golden standard. You should be around 180 centimeters tall, have a sharp fashion sense, and avoid looking like an aje, an old man at all costs. And even if you pass all these tests, you still have to deal with family compatibility. I see this with my own friends as well. I have a friend who's incredibly kind and hardworking and okay looking, but because he's a civil servant worker.
Damn, his buddy just caught his tray. He looks okay. So actually, he's kind of
poor bro.
Hurt.
He's just being honest.
To keep it real.
In the countryside with an average paycheck, no house yet, little savings, a small Hyundai car for commute. He was rejected by potential partners over and over and over again.
Damn.
Well, at least that's what he believes is a big part of the reasoning. But he told me he felt like a failure simply because his specs didn't meet the market rate. And of course, it's not just men who are being graded. Women face their own brutal standards, specifically regarding age and appearance. In the world of high-end matchmaking agencies, they say a woman's grade starts dropping to a C level the moment she turns 30 and above. Nowadays, men are starting to expect women to have a certain amount of savings and a stable job as well. Because the economic system makes it so hard to succeed, both sides have set their barriers so high that they've trapped themselves in a cycle of fatigue.
Is that really that high? He said that she wants to have a career and some savings.
That's not what I think is happening here, right? This is where the caffeinated eyes come in. if you notice, this is the exact same thing that's happening here in the States.
Yep.
He says, hey, these men are expected to provide, and they're looking for this top percent man that's economically attractive to most women in general. It's going to be a small percentage of men who are able to afford a place that's $1 million. Okay, and we're not talking about, I don't know what the traditions are when it comes to like dowry expectations. We can talk to Miss Coffee, I'm assuming, for that. Miss Coffee, do families in Korea still expect men to pay a dowry?
Probably
And
some.
I know that like they may not practice those same traditional expectations any longer, but I know in a place like China, there are certain traditions like a dowry
In Cambodia, it's still a thing.
that are
Not
expected.
every family,
and
but
as the
it's
woman
still a
gets
thing.
older, she'll be like, okay, I don't even need this, I don't even need that, forget the dowry, so on and so forth. Here, they're just asking, I know, to think that it's worse in China is crazy, but based on what I've seen so far, I think it might be. But the way I'm seeing this, based on what we know, is expectation for every man to be economically attractive. And so then what happens? Well, you can't all deserve this man because some of you are losing time on that biological clock. And so what conversation are they having? They're having the same conversation we're having here. You're
Polygamy.
too old, right? I'm looking for something younger. And then the cycle continues and the conversations get repeated.
Miss Coffee answer, not exactly a dowry, but yes, some Korean families still have traditional expectations around marriage money. In South Korea, the old school expectation is usually not that the man pays a dowry to the woman's family. It is more like, the groom side is expected to secure the home or contribute more toward housing, while the bride side may provide furniture, household items, and sometimes gifts to the groom's family. Yonhap described this as a deeply rooted custom, where the man provides the place to live and the woman brings furnishings and gifts.
Okay, so that's right in line with what he was talking about there for the average cost of a family home being $1 million. How many of you guys can afford that?
And this exhaustion has fueled a gender war so intense that international outlets often describe Korea as a country where men and women hate each other. I do have to say though, it's not always that serious in real life. Like go to
Yeah, it's not that serious. And when I went to go visit, I didn't see women and men who were just constantly at each other. No, it just looked like a normal society.
Han River, you'll see a bunch of gazillion of couples walking around, and you'll see people love bombing each other. So honestly, it's mostly an exaggerated internet phenomenon. But when the news and social media starts picking it up and publishing it for views, it definitely starts to poison the public mindset. So
That makes sense.
why does marriage feel like
See, that's not, I don't agree with that either. He's blaming the publications, but you can see exactly what's happening in the birth rate. Is what-
I can see what he's saying where it's not that extreme. Like it's not in the streets everywhere. I think that's what he's trying to say, Shusha. But yes, through the actual numbers, it looks pretty extreme.
I think.
such a huge impossible task? It's because of the comparison disease, especially amplified by social media. Korea has one of the highest Instagram usage rates per capita in the world, and it's making the youth miserable.
Okay, that's facts.
Every morning, the feed is flooded by luxury staycations, hokkangses, five-star hotels unboxing Dior bags, driving Porsches, and it creates a suffocating FOMO effect. In Korea, you don't just get married for yourself. You have to prove to the digital world or your relatives or your friends that you've made it to the upper middle class. The financial burden of a Korean wedding has reached a level of collective madness. It starts with the ceremony, booking a trendy wedding hall, and renting a designer dress. That can all easily cost a couple between $30,000 to $50,000 and above for studio photography, dress rental, and professional makeup. And this holy trinity of wedding prep ensures that the couple spends an entire day acting like movie stars on a film set. And while it sounds glamorous, it's a grueling and expensive ordeal with packages starting at $3,000 and often skyrocketing past $10K, depending on the prestige of a specific studio's name. The real final boss of cost comes through the honsu and yemur. Honsu involves furnishing the new home with top-tier appliances, a heavy burden usually placed on the bride, and this is followed by yemur, a high-stakes exchange of token gifts.
We just heard about that. Shout out to Miss Coffee. Or you can get married in your parents' house and have the wedding later when you actually survive the marriage. Like I did. Maybe just an idea.
Save $40,000
between the two families. And we aren't just talking about simple rings, we're talking about Rolex watches, Chanel bags, meant to signal social standing to both families and friends. In this environment, a wedding...
I mean, my aunts have Rolexes, but I ain't got no Rolex. They didn't get it in their wedding day. What the actual?
isn't just a union of two people. It's a high-cost performance of status that leaves many young people financially exhausted even before their life together begins.
See, but you don't have to do all this. This is the problem with, I guess, that social media lifestyle. Like, you have to show everybody how well you're doing. Fuck that. You know, I'm brokey, and I'm okay. Everybody thinking I'm a brokey.
This pressure is literally pushing an entire generation into isolation. I myself want to do a small wedding. I do not want to do 30K, 40K weddings.
There you go.
However, the tradition and the culture here is just like that, and your parents expect you to do that as well. So it's very hard as an individual to escape that trap.
This is so true for people who come from a different culture with a lot of tradition. 2 words, F them. That's it.
I see where Susha is coming from, but I'm also like, there's reasons why traditions were there. We may not fully understand why we do certain traditions now, but it was there for a particular reason in one moment in time, right? So I think most traditions still have some credence into them in a sense. I don't want to say just chuck them out the window, but
they're going to feel bad. They're going to try to guilt trip you. We went through the exact same thing, my wife and I. People think marriages and weddings are for them, and you have to remind them that it's not, right? They're not. If you choose to have a smaller wedding and you and like your wife is okay with that. In my situation, my wife's the one that even brought up the idea. I said, you know what? Why not? But if you're in that situation and both of you are okay with that, and later on you can have the bigger wedding, do that instead.
Besides all of that, this is where international marriage comes in as a liberation of values. When you marry someone from a different culture, you can stop playing the Korean status game. As psychology professor Yang Nan-mi notes, young Koreans exhausted by excessive competition and social ranking are increasingly seeking international relationships as a way to escape the system.
Makes
It's an
sense.
exit ramp from a race that no one can win. So let's look closer at what these international marriages actually look like in Korea today and why the trends are shifting.
it literally sounds exactly like the U.S., right? Why would men leave the U.S.? Because the barrier of entry for marriage is just not worth it.
So drastically. In the past, international marriage in Korea was almost synonymous with mail order brides in rural farming towns, but those days are over. Today, everyone from office workers in Gangnam to university students in Hongdae are looking abroad. But here's the kicker. Men and women are moving in totally different directions. Currently, the ratio of international marriages is roughly 75%
Yeah, women are not able to do international the way men are able to do international.
Korean men marrying foreign women and 25% Korean women marrying foreign men. Because of this skew, the cultural shift we're seeing is heavily driven by the male perspective. One of the most shocking statistics recently is the explosion of Japanese partners. In 2023 alone, marriages between Korean men and Japanese women jumped
Which is funny because those two people hate each other.
by a staggering 40.
It's like when I married a Vietnamese woman and all my Cambodian family was like, the Vietnamese? Really?
0.2%.
Wonder why that is. Is that because the Japanese women are less, like they expect less culturally? Or are they just more traditional? I wonder what that...
It's weird because Japan has their own feminist type issues too, where women over there are very similar in some kind of fashion. But it's interesting that the two cultures that are so different from each other are able to intermingle when it comes to this particular issue.
that is. Maybe because is the enmeshment of different cultures just naturally present the type of situation where you say, let's define what marriage is going to look like for the both of us? Could be a lot.
I think so, because if you're in a certain culture, you just kind of already know what marriage is supposed to be, because throughout all of your culture, throughout all of your life, you see it. But when you're with another person that's foreign, yeah, you can actually dictate it a little bit better.
lot. Comment down below. I'm curious.
The biggest jump within 10 years, and this phenomenon has been widely publicized by the news, media, trying to analyze the reason behind it. If you know our history, it's pretty surprising, right? So why is this happening? According to the news and the sentiment from online communities, there's a clear reason. Many Korean men feel that Japanese women prioritize the idea of building a life together and are supportive of the journey rather than the starting point or the destination.
Of course.
You don't need a $1 million apartment. And one man summarized it perfectly in a news interview, saying, "When I dated Koreans, I often felt stuck in a relationship that wasn't going anywhere or felt too cautious to move forward. But with my Japanese partner, I felt an immediate emotional connection, like we were actually on the same team."
Are they sure these aren't American women who are in disguise? Are they sure this? Check them. Sounds exactly why men here in the U.S. are traveling abroad. Many of them.
And on the flip side, many Japanese women are drawn to Korean men, perceiving them as more expressive, romantic, and well-groomed than the more reserved men back in Japan. Now, I know these are often generalizations and stereotypes fueled by internet anecdotes, K-dramas, but the impact is real. The perception of international marriage has shifted from a last resort for those who can't marry locally to a favorable, trendy choice. A thought that would have been unthinkable to the previous generation. And surprisingly, it's not just happening in Japan. Thanks to the global explosion of K-pop and K-dramas, Korean men have gone from being overlooked to being seen as some of the most
This is true. Like, shout outs to Korean men with K-pop and everything. They did get the little leg up amongst Asians.
attractive men in Asia.
I gotta back that up, right? I gotta back that up. As far as Asian men and attractiveness, pause. I know what you're thinking. Shisha, hold up. What are we talking about here? Let me clarify. I went to boarding school for 4 years and I made friends. I played soccer for all 4 years. I made friends with a few Koreans, good friends. One of my friends, Reese, who I still talk to him. He told me about how he had to go and join the military. There's another guy who I was really good friends with. His name was Du Wang. And I tell you, these dudes, like, we would have, it was a Christian boarding school. We would have church on Saturdays, and Korean men, and I should have seen it back then, but I began to notice it. They dress sharp. Fashion just seems to be a thing that I've even heard.
Skincare has always been a thing for Korean people. I have quite a few Korean friends that have the med spas, and they said, yeah, Koreans were taught how to like do facial and take care of their face and skin since they were kids. So they had face routines since they were kids. I was like, I see why your face is fucking glowing, asshole.
Some other Koreans say that, like, yeah, they take fashion too seriously, but like dress, when it comes to presentation, Korean men know how to dress sharply. Maybe you're Korean, right? And you can back that up. But I saw that firsthand. I learned some things, you know. But shout out, I learned some things. And also that you have the K-pop and everything else. But when he talked about the grooming aspect compared to, I'm sure, the other men who those women typically see and deal with, I can understand why they would put that as like a plus.
Up till now, you might be wondering, okay, so what about the Korean women? While the numbers are smaller, Korean women are also looking outward, but they are largely heading west. Historically, Asian or Korean women have had a more established popularity in the global marriage market, but their motivations today are shifting. For many women, marriages with men from the US, Canada, or Europe represent a chance to escape the patriarchy rooted in traditional Confucianism in Korea.
That doesn't even make sense.
Specifically, they want to avoid the dreaded she world, that high-pressure Korean in-law culture that can be incredibly overbearing for a daughter-in-law. And they're looking for horizontal relationships where chores are shared equally and the professional careers are genuinely respected.
Boo! Sounds like feminist American chicks to me. Comment down below if you agree.
rather than sidelined by tradition. Now, I want to be fair here. I know plenty of happily married, loving Korean couples, and a lot of what we see online are extreme generalizations fueled by gender war. And it's not that Korean guys don't do any housework at all. In fact, most younger men today are more than willing to share the load. And also, it's not that all Korean women are demanding or unprepared. Some women have already saved up sufficient amounts of money and look for just a decent guy with a...
See, like, as much as this guy wants to be like blue pill and say, no, the skew is going to be way more men that are prepared and doing the things they need to be doing than is for women.
Kind heart. But because these negative narratives permeate our society, they create a ripple effect. And for many, international marriage looks like the only available escape hatch from a rigid social script. Speaking of romanticizing these unions, we have to talk about the massive catalyst, YouTube. If you search for Hanil Bubu or Gukje couple, you'll find thousands of channels, and most of them are wildly successful. I would say many of these creators act as pioneers, showing how to navigate life, visas, insurance, and family introductions in a foreign land and different culture. But naturally, because these channels are built on views, sometimes they have the tendency to focus on the highlights, which fuels a powerful fantasy. And from the men's perspective, it could be like, oh, look how happy he is because his foreign wife is so open-minded and appreciative. And from the women's perspective, it could be like, look how charming that Korean husband is, and their lifestyle in Seoul looks like a K-drama. But while these vlogs provide a somewhat romanticized, positive idea of international marriage, there is also an overlooked, much darker side to these recent statistics that we need to be careful about. For decades, a commercial matchmaking industry has thrived, particularly targeting Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia.
Listen, there might be some money in this international dating. How do we escape feminist women globally? Right, I'm seeing some dollar signs here. What can we do? Let's come up with some ideas. Hit me up.
And note that these are included into...
Me and Sushi are on the same boat here. When I see shit like this, I'm like, so there's a market for this, huh?
to the international marriage stats as well. It's a supply and demand market born from a desperate marriage gap in rural Korea. As of 2023 statistics, the gender ratio in rural areas remain heavily skewed, with Vietnam alone accounting for 33.5% of all foreign brides in Korea. The process is staggeringly fast. Sometimes it happens fully remote. This speed marriage industry is often criticized as they often fall into a blind spot of legal protection. Some face severe abuse, extreme pressure from in-laws, or are forced into unpaid labor on family farms. And because the union wasn't built on love, but on a financial transaction, the foundation for happiness is dangerously thin. The pain goes both ways. Not all Korean husbands are the villains, and not all wives are the victims as well. There's a growing phenomenon of planned runaways where a spouse obtains residency and then disappears after a certain amount of time. There's also visa fraud, where marriage is used simply as a ticket to enter the Korean job market. Many Korean men, often from lower income rural backgrounds, have lost their entire life savings and their hearts to these scams, with almost no legal recourse to
normal pumps and dumps when it comes to marriage, of people using them for green cards or whatever it is. So similar.
Cover their losses. And current Korean laws arguably make it worse. A foreign spouse's right to stay often depends on the Korean husband's guarantee or signature. This creates a toxic master and servant kind of dynamic instead of a husband and wife partnership. It's a recipe for disaster that treats human lives like commodities. Korea now has over 2.5 million foreign residents, making up roughly 4.9% of our population, and it's expected to grow. By OECD standards, we are officially standing on the doorstep of becoming a multicultural nation. But the big question remains, are we actually ready to live together? The concept of single ethnic group, 단일 민족, is slowly moving into the history books. And these 2.5 million people aren't just guests passing through. They are our coworkers, our neighbors, and fellow citizens, and most importantly, our loved ones.
Yeah, they're experiencing what we experience here, mass immigration. You know, the difference of culture, because the dominant culture is being suppressed by new cultures
as well.
Well, you guys, I mean, there's just a little bit left over here. I'll say this. From what I see, feminism played a huge role on how things turned out in South Korea. Now, are there other things at play? Yes, I believe that women are also duped by these huge corporations who they know they could cash in
Yep.
very quickly when they put out the type of propaganda that encourages more spending, that encourages a luxury lifestyle. And they are the insidious puppet masters in the background as well. But you have to acknowledge that first. Check out some of these comments and see what the people have to say. Top comment here says 30K wedding is absurd given how high the cost of living is. Somebody else here added, Asians put too much emphasis on looking good in front of others. It's all for show. Couples.
This is very true. Asians do have this thing about having a facade.
Should plan according to their means when they start out and then take it from there. Somebody else here says, excellent overview. I've observed this in Japan and China too, where marrying a foreigner gives you an exit ramp from stifling cultural expectations, even if that foreigner is just a neighboring Asian. So it does seem like when you come together with somebody who has different expectations and cultural norms, instead of leaning into that, you sort of start off at a blank slate when it comes to expectations. I do think that in general, the men who are doing this at large are seeking women who are more cooperative, not feminist, and are gladly willing to do their part in the household within reason. For example, I've said this many, many times. A man shouldn't be simply respected just because of what's between his legs. There needs to be love in that too, right? There needs to be an expectation that he's going to lead with love, caring, and compassion. And then also you have competency, right? I've said this as someone who's African and an American citizen. I've noticed that there is a justifiable reason why women who come from African countries, very traditional families, may not want to repeat certain aspects of what they saw in their household. And I think the particular thing that I see as an issue is they want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, when I believe you can still have a healthy dynamic of what you saw in your household. But a man should understand that he needs to bring more than what's between his legs. Right. And I think that is an issue. Next comment here says low birth rate is a major problem in many countries. Somebody else who says, LOL, even the Koreans are becoming passport bros. Of course, guys, curious to know what you think. Leave your comments down below.
Passport broing only makes sense because everything's globalized now. Now you can meet people from anywhere. You can have translation apps. You have all these things to be able to just move or go somewhere else. Unlike before, right? It was hard to go to another country and live in another country because it was just so hard to acclimate, so hard to learn the language. Now there's a lot more things to help and assist these things. And again, everything's been globalized. Might as well go see the world and what the world has to offer. And it has to offer a lot of different people, cultures, and backgrounds. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I really appreciate that. And catch you guys next time. Ciao.